So what I'm gonna do now is just share the a snippet from the debate. Yeah. And I'm going to say two snippets where Brother Taz is talking and demonstrate the contradiction of this anything but African, anti African propaganda. All right. Now, you don't have to be an African, you don't have to want to identify as African. I'm concerned with why, when it comes to the fact that black people seem to want to discard Africanness, they do so whilst becoming preoccupied with this anti-African agenda. Yeah. If you're an American, just be an American. Why do you have so much to say about Africa and African people? If you are a Carib or a Taino, why is it that so much of your Carib or Taino identity is based around disparaging African people and painting a degraded, demonized image, yeah, of African people? Why is that such the focus for all of these people? Yeah. So we're going at some things. Yeah. And I think Brother Jabari dealt with the thing expertly yesterday. So we're not gonna re-legislate the whole debate. We just want to emphasize our point. Yeah. And this point actually relates to much of the discussions that I've been having recently around Kimoyo African spirituality. All right. And I'm gonna explain why that is. This is one of the reasons why I'm homing in on this point. Yeah. I'm gonna explain that why that is in a second. But for now, we're gonna hear from the brother himself, Brother Taz. Again, I wasn't aware of this brother up until yesterday, but it was painful to listen to this brother. Um, as it is whenever you come across Africans who are so self-hating, yeah, have been indoctrinated into such deep levels of self-hating Negroism, that they spout these. It's a very painful thing, but we've been dealing with this reality for centuries as African people, and it's one of them things that we just have to accept as a part of our journey. That many of us are sick, yeah, and are infused with that deep self-hatred that was indoctrinated into us by Europeans during enslavement and colonization. But in terms of bringing the healing, we have to analyze and dissect what the brother has said. And so we're going to do that right about now. And so tune in, family, tune in. All right, please.
Now, instead of pretending like, oh, I love Africa so much, some of us are willing to tell you about the open rejection of running to Africa. Some people were here and decided to fight on these terms. Why? Because Africa isn't just Africa. It's not just one continent. These things that these people sell you and make it sound like Africa is just one big happy continent is false. There's no such thing as an African culture because the entire continent is full of different culture. There is no such thing as an African language because the language is different everywhere. These people have invaded each other's homelands. These people don't all get along themselves. But only when you look at America, you start to talking about black people that must be unified. But when you look at that continent and see no unity, you don't think that they're not unified. And that's where the problem comes in. Because again, as a black American, you're more unified with your people in America than they are on that continent. We know that because we can see it. And so if you have an 80% black continent that is being controlled by white supremacy, why would black Americans want to connect themselves to that? Especially when the black American right now is actually being mistaught and not dealing with what's happening with their children. See, the black American is sending his children to schools that teach them that slaves were immigrants, that slaves were.
All right, family. So you heard that, right? We're emphasizing this idea that there is no African culture. Yeah, there is no African culture. Why? Because 54 countries exist on the African continent. Because there's different languages on the African continent, and all of these things. Yeah, we want just delve in at that point there little more. All right, and in order to do so, let me make sure I got my timestamp correct. Yeah, I'm gonna go to a little bit later yeah, in the debate, where the brother is also analyzing this concept called African culture, yeah, that he says uh does not exist. There is no African culture. You heard that with your own ears, all right? And this clip is going to be a little bit longer. We're gonna have to get through an ad in this part, it looks like, as well, but stay tuned. Yeah, I'm going to play an extensive amount of this particular clip. Yeah, and the reason will become clear when I'm done. All right, but we're gonna hear the brother for an extensive period of time run down certain information.
Somebody's actually investing in it and not giving you a whole bunch of rhetoric. See, anybody
I think when I was about early 20s, and someone made a remark about my hairline receding, and it was like shock horror to
can go over there and walk around and say, look, I was here. But you're not investing in Africa. That's why they over there messing with them women. That's why they over there taking whatever they want to, taking those resources and turning those resources into Chinese resources. Not Black Americans. Black Americans need to focus on what we're doing, because you got a whole continent over there that they're not protecting. They're literally giving their continent away to another group of men. And if they aren't going to fight to keep their resources, why exactly should the Black American be on board fighting for them? It makes no sense. You have your own fight to deal with here in America, while their resources over there, they're not even controlling. They're not controlling them. They're not in control of them. And people that are there on that continent are starting to evolve into accepting other groups of people being there. I mean, we can make it seem like Africa this, Africa that, Africa, 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 but in reality, the United States is over there. Great Britain is over there. China's over there. Everybody's there except you, the Black man who keeps talking that Africa stuff. Africa, 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 yet you're not there.
All right, so this is the only time I'm going to pause this particular clip. Yeah, this is the only time I'm going to pause this particular clip. But I want to highlight something here. Look what this thing says. Military rule is contagious in Africa. Yeah, and this is a New York Times article, and he juxtaposes this with the website for Africa, the U.S. Military High Command. All right, and the argument is that Africa could not even protect itself. Yeah, this is the idea. All right, from who? The U.S. Military High Command. Okay, so the contradiction is this: you are a Black American, you're not an African. All right, so why are you more concerned with the fact that Africa couldn't protect itself than what America is doing in Africa? Why is there no analysis of that? What is the U.S. Military High Command doing in Africa? And what do you, as an American, yes, not an African, an American, have to say about it? Why is there no critique, yeah, analysis, or even recognition of US imperialism and the criminal activities of this military and its CIA, yeah, in the world? Why is that? I'm not asking you to analyze this from an African perspective, yeah, but you are an American, and maybe that is the reason why. Because it seems to me that anti-Africanness produces an allegiance, yeah, to Western imperialism. The brother or sister that I was talking about earlier, yeah, in relation to this idea of Black Caribbean British or Black British Caribbeans, yeah, seem to want to discard African identity for the sake of embracing British identity. That we need to do away with the term African Caribbean and embrace the term Black British Caribbean. What is it about anti-Africanness, yeah, that produces in our people an allegiance to white people, yeah, Western nation states and European identities? And in doing so, we begin to defend and excuse and wish away or ignore the criminal activities of these nation states in the world. I'm just pointing that out. Yeah. And we're going to leave that there and continue with the rest of this diatribe. I want you to please listen carefully. I'm going to explain why I'm playing this in the end. Now, remember the previous clip I played, the brother said that there is no such thing as African culture. Yeah, because Africa is 54 countries. Yeah, it's got how much different languages and how much different cultures. So there's no such thing as African culture. Bear that in mind when you listen to the rest of this particular clip.
They're putting in the work that everybody else is putting in. The white man controls Africa now. The Asian man controls Africa. Your heart is in it, but your dime ain't in it. And that is the problem. That's why they're moving forward without you. See, y'all trying to move race first and convince people here that you're controlling Africa when they get ready to go meet with somebody, they bumping elbows with an Asian man. They're signing deals with a white man. The black man goes over there as a tourist and then comes back and tries to convince you that it's your homeland. No, you're a tourist. That's why you don't live there. And instead of trying to understand where Taz's coming from, you simply try to throw a narrative on them. Why don't you throw a narrative on those weak Africans who can't protect their women, though? I see you don't want to get deep into the culture of Africa and why a black man like myself would never want to connect to a continent full of men that terrorize their own women. Black men who terrorize women and children and don't nobody talk about it. Because when he says we don't want to connect to Africa, well, there's a reason why. Not all of us are co-signing rape. See, they still got to go out in the streets and march and complain to other black men about rape because these weak African men won't stand up for these women. These weak African men won't stand up for these babies. Whether we're talking about Liberia, South Africa, we can go all across the country. You don't find black men standing up for their women and children, which is why Asians can come over there and take over your continent and start building on it and have you running and telling other black Americans that there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with black people in America who ignore what's going on that continent. Different groups of black men raping black women. And so if you love Africa so much, how dare you ignore what's going on to those people? It's interesting because I know how it works, right? What you tell me is that, well, child marriage is rape and all of those things happen in America. Yeah, but America ain't 80% black. Your continent is. Your continent is so-called full of black people. You want me to love the continent so much because it's full of black people.
5 minutes.
Black people, those black people on that continent are protecting the women and children of those continents, of those countries. And so if we can look to a continent where children are being married off and the women are not protected from other groups of men going into that continent, how exactly do you think a black American like myself is supposed to speak to protecting groups of women on a continent where the weak men on that continent don't want to protect them? These weak Africans do not want to protect their own children because they're so busy trying to marry them. They're so busy trying to have sex with these babies that they don't think protection. See, it's sad that the black American thinks that he can just take you and throw you right next to some Africans who won't even stand up for their women and children. I don't want that. I don't want that for black Americans. But if that's what you want for your
Mac Containers have developed a container home and they can be transported and
yourself, it's perfectly fine. You can do it. What I'm telling you is I went and got facts to speak to that African culture you keep hiding from, to speak to that African understanding y'all want to keep on selling. I bring facts, not feelings, not I feel like my grandma, I feel like my grandpa. No, I feel like you should care more about these children over there on the continent where you can go and dig up the information yourself. You know, Somalia, where over 90% of girls and women have been subjected to female genital mutilation. I'm pretty sure Jabari ain't got much on that. I'm pretty sure these African wannabes, you know, these E-Africans, these 23andMe Africans, they ain't got much to say about female genital mutilation and what's going on over there on that continent, what they're doing to these babies and these girls. See, they got to get the whole world behind it to try to stop these weird Africans from doing this to these girls. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why these Africans are so hell-bent on genetic mutilation, why they don't mind hurting girls and women. Why is it that we can find all over the continent this culture? This is not just some random event going on in one place. This is an African culture to rape, child marriage, genetic mutilation. Yeah, that's what this African paradigm leaves us with. An estimated 55 million girls under the age of 15 in 28 African countries have experienced female genetic mutilation. This is why you can run from whatever you want to, feelings.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Facts aren't going anywhere. These facts are going to have to stand, and it's going to hurt you to have to try to explain how Black Americans should be connecting to this. Why would we? Why would we want to? Again, ask yourself, when you have women living on the continent at risk of being raped, of being mutilated, of being married off as children, what exactly does the Black American have that he can do here on behalf of those young girls? There's nothing I can do. And I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm just telling you that the rest of the world knows it. The rest of the world is fully aware of the female genetic mutilation taking place in Kenya and many other places on the continent, that these broken bucks, you know, buck breaking, these broken bucks won't speak again. It takes somebody like me to tell you.
All right. So y'all heard that, yeah? So 2 different clips. In the first, there is no African culture, 54 countries, how much different language, etc., etc. By the time we get to the second clip, there is African culture. And African culture is rape. African culture is female genetic mutilation. He means female genital mutilation. African culture is marrying girls to big men. Yeah. And what was the other one? There was female genital mutilation, there was rape, and there was one other that is slipping my mind at the moment. Yeah. The contradiction here should be obvious. All right. And it should be obvious that also that nowhere in the Black world are our women sufficiently protected. Are people in general sufficiently protected? Nowhere in the world are our nations free from the intrusion and the invasion of Western nations and communities. I should say nowhere, no nation or community. Yeah. So no community in a majority white nation in America or the UK or France or anywhere in the world are Black people experiencing high levels of protection among ourselves. Yeah. Nowhere in the world. That should be obvious. All right. It should also be obvious that even if everything that the brother said is true, yeah, and we're not going to even try to, because one of the things that happens in debates such as these, yeah, and it's a difficult one to address, is that people just throw things at the wall. All right, they don't have to contextualize, they don't have to be honest, they don't have to, you know, to deal with history and culture sociology, economics, and all of the factors that go into the realities that we face in many of our different nations. They don't have to go into that. Yeah, they can just throw things out without even proper sourcing. Yeah, and require you to have to run around dealing with all of these random different points. Yeah, that they've thrown out there for the masses to consume. Yeah, and if you're intelligent, you don't try to do that, because that's not the point. Yeah, the point is to throw all these things out and to paint a particular kind of picture, and knowing that most people listening are not going to do any further research. Yeah, and don't really care to, because the disparaging image of Africa and African people is enough. All right, but my interest in those particular clips is how we've gone, yeah, from no African culture whatsoever. It's impossible. You can't have no African culture except in the context of rape, yeah, molestation, female genital mutilation. How does that become the only African culture that we can recognize as African culture? This should be unequivocal evidence of the fact that when we're dealing with mentalities such as these, the self-hating Negro mentality, yeah, that these people are quite happy with the idea of African culture as long as it doesn't represent anything positive. I know, because I've been in these conversations. And whenever you say African spirituality, African culture, somebody says, well, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as African culture. And then they give you, yeah, an image of a man with a plate in his lip, and ask you, if you love African culture so much, why you don't follow that? You just got told me that there's no such thing as African culture. They're all so different. So why is my embrace of African culture being defined by now this man with a plate in his lip? Does that even make sense? And that's not to disparage the brother with a plate in his lip. I'm just asking a question. Yeah. So in order to analyze this a little piece further, what I want to do is explore the work of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop. And before I do that, for those who weren't here, yeah, let me play this clip again. All right. I opened with a clip of my father speaking, and I'm on a clip called "Stop Romanticizing Africa." I'm going to play it again because it relates to what the brother has said. Because the reality is, even if every word that he said was true and fully contextualized, why does that mean that we're not African? All of those things can be true, and the fact that we're still African can be true. Ask yourself that. If all these degrading images, and why does that mean that we're not African? We, the descendants of people who come from the Yoruba, known as the Yoruba, yeah, known, and though most of them weren't known as the Yoruba before we left, but known as the Igbo, the Ewe. We who are the descendants of these people, yes, various different groups of people that represent our ancestors in the Americas, the Kikongo. Yeah, we who are the Fon, we who are the Mande, yeah, we who are the Ga, the Ogoni, the Songe, various different groups of people that make up our ancestral lines. Yeah, these are these people. So how is it that even if all about the things that the brother has said is true, that now because those things are true, we no longer descend from those people, therefore we're no longer African? How does that even make logical sense? Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the reality is, we know that our people everywhere in the world, including the continent of Africa, have challenges. It doesn't make any difference to the fact that Africa is our mother.
My brother also talks about our romanticizing of Mama Africa. I don't romanticize Mama Africa. I'm not into romance, I'm into Afrima. Right. And I am indeed most Afrimantic about and Hajj, then I can be excited about Mama the largest and most powerful real estate on the face of the earth, which belongs to us. Right. If you accept that Africa is the womb of humanity, then you accept that Africa, by implication, is our mother. That's right. That's right. We came out of the womb of Africa. That's so. Africa is our mother. That's right. Your mother may be perfect, may be imperfect, but she is still your mother. That's so. Africa is my mother, and her state presently is most imperfect, but she is still my mother. There was a woman, an African woman, who was in university. She was adopted, and she went to university. And brothers and sisters, one day, another woman came to her and said, your mother is in the canteen and she wants to speak to you. Listen good. And she got up and ran out. She was raised by white people. She got up and ran out to see her mother, and when she looked, she saw a black woman, an African woman, with her face badly distorted because her face was burnt. Listen good. The woman looked at her mother and she said to the person that called her, oh, that's not my mother. My mother is not that ugly. Listen good. She went back to where she was, and the sister went with her. And whilst they were in her dormitory, her mother came, she found the dormitory, entered the dormitory, and said to her, yes, indeed, I am your mother. She said, I am not now what I looked like when I had you. Listen good. If you want to know what I look like, look in the mirror. Good son. I look exactly like you. Then she said, I got this way, my child, because I tried to save you from a fire. Listen good. You were in a house that was burning down, and I sacrificed my beauty to save your life. That's right. And she said, the only thing that pains me now is that you have become so mean and so wretched in your spirit. Mama Africa may not be looking too beautiful now, brothers and sisters, but she is still our mother.
All right, so we get the point, kings and queens. Yeah, Mama Africa may not be looking too beautiful, and that's the correct. Mama Africa will only look beautiful when African people begin to look beautiful, and African people nowhere in the world are looking as beautiful as we should be right about now. Yeah, so we can single out the continent if we want, but Africans in the UK, Africans in America, Africans in Jamaica, Trinidad, Brazil, Colombia, India, France, Belgium, Portugal, anywhere in the world are not looking as beautiful as we should be right about now. But we're not here just to get at Brother Taz. Yeah, I wanted to highlight that aspect of the conversation to give emphasis to why brothers and sisters like myself focus on explaining elements of African culture, particularly through philosophy and spirituality. Yeah, because a part of the liberation process has to be the restoration and the rescuing of our culture from the hyper denigration that it has experienced, and also our capacity to make our culture, our philosophies functional in the arenas of politics, economics, and social order in general. And so I'm going to go into the works of Sheikh Anta Diop, because this is about our culture and identity. Yeah, as I said earlier. Before I do that, I'm going to touch on an excerpt from this book. Yeah, that explains one or two things. Yeah, and it's edited by Mama Ama Mazama, who is one of the key definers, yeah, and promoters of the paradigm known as Afrocentricity, yeah. And the book is entitled The Afrocentric Paradigm. I do encourage ones and ones to get it, yeah. Whatever your perspective, if you're sincere in learning and knowing about the African-centered or Afrocentric perspective, then do get this text, all right? It will explain one or two things for you, yeah. Mambo Amma also, I spoke to a few years ago. She's also a Mambo, which is a Vudan priestess. Yeah. And in some of the conversations that I've been having recently, it has been said that Vudan is not a spiritual system, it's a practice. That is false. And so if you want more information on that, you can get more from Mambo Amma Mazama. Just check the videos on my channel and you see me having conversed and interviewed her. No doubt we'll do that again. All right. But Mamba Amma wrote the introduction to this book, yeah, and I'm going to read a paragraph from it that explains and to introduce what we're going to go into from Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in a little while, yeah. And she says the ontological reduction of colonized people. Ontology is about the self, yeah, how we define and understand the self, all right, who we are, and as individuals and as a people collectively. The ontological reduction of colonized people that is a necessary part of colonialism has been well understood and described, thanks in particular to Albert Memmi, 1991, and Frantz Fanon, 1952 and 1968. These two authors expose quite brilliantly the dialectical relationship that colonialism creates, listen carefully, between a hyper-valorized colonial structure. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, British. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, French. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, American. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, Spanish, etc., etc. A hyper-valorized colonial culture and a systematically denigrated colonized culture. A systematically denigrated colonized culture, African. Animality and plurality are two major metaphors around which the reductive discourse on the colonized is organized. We get reduced to primitiveness and animal instincts. We become animals. This is why African indigenous spiritual systems are referred to with terms like animalism, as we've explored previously. Yeah? Animalism, animism, and all of these things. Animality and plurality are the two major metaphors around which the reductive discourse on the colonized is organized. Conversely, the colonizer, who is supposed to have reached a higher level in the evolutionary ladder, is made to symbolize the perfection that maturity and wisdom bring. So we discard all this African business. We're now Caribbean British, because that gets us farther away from this African thing. We're now just American. Yeah? We're French. We want to follow Westminster democracy and capitalism and socialism. Hey, conversely, the colonizer, who is supposed to have reached a higher level in the evolutionary ladder, is made to symbolize the perfection that maturity and wisdom bring. The conclusion is self-evident. Only through a careful imitation of Europeans can the colonized people hope to improve their lot. We can't be African and improve our lot. Yeah? We have to become British. Black British. British black. More specifically, because the British come first. Become American. Yeah, can't deal with this African. If we want to improve our lot, can't talk as African foolishness. What you deal with? Yeah. Only through a careful imitation of Europeans can colonized people hope to improve their lot and move out of the animality and childhood into full humanity and adulthood. This imitation process corresponds to what Mudimbe 1988 has referred to as the conversion process. We convert ourselves out of our history, out of our experience, out of our traditions, out of our culture, and imitate, convert into imitations of the cultures and the identities of our oppressors, our colonizers. Make no mistake about it, family. British is a colonial identity as far as Africans are concerned. American is a colonial identity as far as Africans are concerned.